you cannot operate a business illegally.
What does settling do for kind of the advancement of tennis?
And they've already told us it's going to affect our prize money, our pension. They won't, the tour is going to go bankrupt. Like that's nonsense.
I was just wondering how much visibility he had into like the content of the lawsuit before it was announced.
How many unread text messages did you have that first day?
Definitely, was getting a lot of dirty looks. Guys that you would normally come up and shake my hand and say hi wouldn't even look me in the eye.
If you had the choice and you could select your own team from the whole history of Canada, what would your Davis Cup team be?
All right, welcome back to The Slice. We've got a very special guest today with us. We've got Vasek Pospisil joining us, representing the PTPA, to talk about the recent news and about some updates from his career and kind of some fun stories. So Vasek, thanks for joining us amidst a very busy schedule right now.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not gonna bury the lead at all. I mean, it must have been a pretty crazy 2 weeks for you. So I guess my first question is, what has the last 2 weeks looked like for you since the announcement of the PTPA-led class action lawsuit?
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. That's for sure. Filing a large, a federal case, antitrust case in a major global sport is always going to be a busy time. That's for sure. And just for context for your viewers as well, I mean, we've been trying for years to collaborate with the ATP and WTA and really make some inroads and to be part of the system, to be accepted in tennis, and we didn't want to file a lawsuit. That was never the intention. I mean, from the beginning, we really wanted this to be collaborative, and unfortunately, we could not make any progress, and we had no choice. I mean, at some point, we didn't start the PTPA to just be around without it being able to make any major changes in the sport and without achieving our goals. Our goal was to have a true player voice in tennis, and where players were treated as business partners and have some sort of leverage in a negotiation. And unfortunately, we couldn't get there, so we had no choice but to file this lawsuit.
Yeah, and just so it's been big news in the tennis world. We were in Miami, JP and I, when that news dropped, so we were kind of right almost on ground zero. I was in the press conference with Djokovic and a number of other players when they were kind of first asked about it. But I guess since the PTPA has existed, could you count how many meetings or productive meetings you guys have had with the tours or with the governing bodies of tennis? Like, has there been any, or has there been, a lot that you can point to and say, like, this is times that they've worked with us, or has it just been kind of complete shutout?
Well, it's been, I personally can't count on how many, because I haven't been leading those conversations. It's actually been Ahmad and the team that's been leading. I've had several meetings with the Grand Slams and some of the folks from that side of the tennis world, but not the ATP itself. And I don't know if it's, partly because of the antagonistic start that we had, and they really just did not accept us, and they were threatening players, that were to join the PTPA officially with possible, retaliation, basically, right? So it was a very scary time for players to even associate themselves with the PTPA. So we took a different strategy, and it has been difficult to make progress. Like I said, I mean, I'm hearing the updates from Ahmad. He's been leading those conversations, and they're, from what I hear, they're cordial and they're fine, but they never lead to any action. And I know that over the last year or so, we've made some progress in having serious discussions with the Grand Slams, and they take us seriously, and they I believe appreciate the need for a player association to exist, and I think they have a more of a long-term vision, understanding that tennis needs to evolve the same way that other sports have, which currently to date has not been the case, and at the expense of the sport itself. I mean, the fans, the tournaments, the players. Sport hasn't been growing. I mean, it's the third most watched sport in the world, second most bet on sport in the world, and it's completely underperforming. And that's a result of a monopoly that's been created, and a business that hasn't been run like I said, the right way, and hasn't been run, and it's an incredible product. I think it's the best sport in the world, but and then players fall behind, and like I said, and the fans and sports and the sport itself. So when you look at and I'm not even getting into the fact that players are not getting treated fairly, even within the underperforming structure of today. I mean, the percentage of revenue that goes back to the athletes in tennis is laughable. As a major global sport that's that's a multi-billion-dollar business, it's the worst. And so I think, if you have 100 players that are able to make a living on the men's and the women's side in such a huge business, obviously there's a lot of red flags there, and we know what they are, and hence the lawsuit.
Yeah. Go. Well, wait, you got something, Steven?
Well, I was just gonna follow up on that and then JP go. Like we were as I mentioned, we were in the interview or the press conference with Djokovic, and he's obviously he was your co-founder with this. I did want to know, he said in his press conference famously that he agreed with some of the wording in the lawsuit, but not all of it. And he didn't want to put his name on it, and he said because he wanted other players to step up. I was just wondering how much visibility he had into like the content of the lawsuit before it was announced.
Yeah, I mean, he was, very much part of the process, getting updated. He had the lawsuit, him and his agent, months or a month, I don't know exactly when, but with plenty of time, obviously. And I think for him, from the context, and I obviously spoke to him a few times prior to filing the lawsuit, and I think and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think his position is that he didn't want to make this about him. He wanted to make it about the wider group of players and the much needed change in tennis, and of course, as a PTPA co-founder, this is a PTPA co-led lawsuit. So almost goes without saying that he's part of it. So I guess it was his preference to take the position as PTPA co-founder, being involved in the lawsuit from that angle versus a direct name plaintiff, and he clearly had his reasons, but he's also very much aware and supportive of what we're doing. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I think it's so crazy too when we're talking about only the top 100 guys are making enough money to sort of do their thing. When you look at these other sports, like you're saying, if you take 100 football players, that's legitimately 2 teams. And yeah, so it's so wild to hear it put out there. But something that I've been curious about when you were first getting involved, when you're showing up to the tournaments, and obviously you're still active, you've been dealing with your injuries, but when you're showing up and you're associated with the PTPA, could you feel a little bit of a target on your back as you're walking through? Like, kind of, what was that experience like?
Oh yeah, for sure. It was.
Yeah.
It's gotten a bit better. Well, I say recently, maybe prior to the last few weeks. But initially, absolutely. When we launched, I just felt like I had a target on my back. I went from being, relatively liked, even on the tournament side. From my understanding, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I felt like people liked me, and that the tournaments liked me, and tournament directors and ATP. And then, of course, it just took a 180 switch, and you can feel it, the tension in the room. If I'm, definitely, was getting a lot of dirty looks. Guys that you would normally come up and shake my hand and say hi wouldn't even look me in the eye. So it's a very uncomfortable feeling for sure. But anytime, but on the flip side of that, players would love what I was doing and support that. And I constantly get messages from guys that are very appreciative of the fight that we're putting up. But of course, anytime you want to make significant change in anything, or change the status quo of a huge machine, like the business of tennis, it's never going to be easy, and there's sacrifices that come with that, and which I'm totally okay with, because I'm always going to stand up for what I believe is right, and and for fairness and justice, and I obviously, as I learn more about the sport and how it's run on the business side, I really didn't like what I was seeing. And the more I learned, the more obvious it was that it's extremely backwards, and that it needs to change. So that was just something that I decided at some point that I had to do. And just out of principle, really.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and you know, I can understand how it'd be uncomfortable, and I, from personal experience, trying to operate a media business, mainly interfacing with the ATP, like I can attest to the fact that things are not run in a way that I can imagine everyone getting taken care of. Media members are routinely given notice if they're given credentials or not, like 4 days before a tournament starts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times on the flip side of that though, when I see incompetence, which is maybe the word I would use in a lot of ways, with kind of disorganization on the ATP side of thing, I would attribute that more to like maybe a lack of strength or a lack of funding. And I think a fear that I've kind of and heard from people on the ground in Miami was that if this lawsuit, fighting this lawsuit will be an expense to all of the people that were named in it. And to me, it seems like the ATP and the WTA have probably the least, maybe the ITF, but they have the least amount of resources to fight that compared to the Grand Slams. Like, just for a numbers case, and correct me if any of these numbers don't seem right, but I believe actually your friend Milos Raonic laid it out like this. There's, out of all the revenue in tennis, the Grand Slams, those 4 tournaments represent about 80% of that revenue. 20% comes from essentially the ATP and the WTA. And my understanding is that the players get the smallest percentage of the revenue as a share of their prize money at the Grand Slams. It's like around 13 or 14%. And then in the ATP, it's about 45% go to the players. Or is that too high?
No, that's not right. That's not right. So I think, I mean, there are a couple ways to attack that question. One, do they have the funds? Absolutely. There's no question about it. We know that they have reserved, that they have funds that more than enough to fight this. One of the things that they, that they like to spread is fear. And that's, that is a common tactic that they've used over the years. And that's one of the things that we're hearing in the locker rooms now, players saying, oh my God, like, it's going to cost them, I'm not going to say the figure of what they're saying, but a ludicrous amount. And it's going to affect, and they've already told us it's going to affect our prize money, our pension, they won't, the tour is going to go bankrupt. Like that's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. I mean, and to say that these Masters events are not, making millions of dollars is also complete nonsense. I mean, they're selling for hundreds of millions. The value of these events has skyrocketed, and we don't have transparency on the financials of these Masters events. I mean, when I was on the council, it was a constant battle to see, well, what are their financials? What actually, like, how much are they actually making? And what is the actual percentage of revenue that's going to the players? So there's no insight into these financials either. So yes, on the Grand Slam level, we know that it's very low, that they're only paying players a very small fraction of what they should be, hence why they're co-conspirators. And again, to elaborate further on the whole collusion and price fixing element of this lawsuit, to give you an example, a few years ago, Larry Ellison tried to increase the prize money for the players in Indian Wells, and it got vetoed, and he wasn't allowed to. Basically the ATP and I guess the other events and the board, right, the Masters events or whoever makes these decisions, wouldn't allow him to increase the prize money. So that's already artificially suppressing player opportunities and funds. And so, I mean, you can't, regardless, you cannot operate a business illegally. It's just not okay. So if hypothetically they just said, hey, you know what, we need to stop this lawsuit, then we can settle tomorrow. I mean, if they call us tomorrow and say, okay, you know what, we've been breaking the law, we've had a good run, which they have. Anyone that will take the time to read through this 162 page filing will see pretty compelling evidence. Hence why our lawyers are so confident. They say they've never seen anything in sport this bad, and they've won every single case in all other major sports. So very similar cases, all class action antitrust lawsuits. So, for me, you're breaking the law. That's not okay, and it has to be fixed. And and if you want to drag this out 5 years, then okay, you can drag it out 5 years. If you want to sit at the table tomorrow, then we're ready to do it tomorrow. So it really just depends on how they react And there's no way that they don't have the funds. This is just a scare tactic that they're spreading in the locker room because they want players to just, be to turn and not support this or be afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. It's the same playbook that they've used in all other sports. And I've heard this from the lawyers directly, that every single time the owners made a case, this is going to bankrupt, this is going to destroy the sport, the league will no longer exist. And look how well they're all doing, right? So we're not buying that. We know that's not the case. And again, like I said, this is not, we're not here to try to destroy tennis, or that's the last thing. We're trying to fix it. And we really believe that this is the first step to freeing tennis to organically grow to its full potential and treating everyone the right way in the process.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And JP and I talking about this on the podcast without interviewing you have both said, like, we believe in the existence of the PTPA is probably like sped up some of these changes that the ATP has implemented since you guys existed, with the minimum salary for players up to rank 250, etc. But I guess just quickly, if the ATP is like, okay, let's settle, and it's not just the ATP, so I don't know how this kind of works, but if they're like, yeah, let's settle, what does settling do for kind of the advancement of tennis? Like, what is that, just money that comes to the PTPA that again then gets kind of distributed to players, or how does this kind of immediately benefit tennis?
Well, I mean, I think there are certain non-negotiables that we have, which is, the tennis needs to be restructured. There needs to be a player association. Players need to be independent and to be able to bargain and negotiate and have professionals that truly represent them, not the illusion of representation that is currently in place. The other is prize money being tied to the percentage of gross revenue, not a prize money formula that you can, be very creative to suppress player prize money, which is what's happening currently. Is make it very simple. Tied to gross revenue. Why not? Right. That's a very simple thing. We have our expenses that we have, tournaments, you have your expenses. And I'm not saying it has to be 50% or 40% or 30% or 80%. I'm just saying that's the formula that has to be in place. And then, you get the two sides, you come to the table and you decide what's fair, what's right. You can make your arguments on one side, why tennis is different and why it needs to be different than other sports. We can make arguments, and then you come to the middle and you both compromise, and that's the deal. So for me, those two are critical. And then of course, schedule, player welfare. Like, we don't have a say in any of this stuff. We have a say. I mean, we can speak, we can go on a microphone and yell and do all this stuff, but we have no ability to actually affect that change. It's really just in their hands if they decide they want to do it or not. And if they don't, if they feel like, well, it's not in our interest, so they just say no, and they give us some bogus reasons. But that's just not, it's not okay to play matches until 3 a.m. and then have to wake up and play the next day, or it's not okay that the season goes from, beginning of January, actually very end of December, when players have to actually fly in December already, all the way through to the end of November. It's crazy that we have a 1 month off season. I mean, that's just, that's not okay. No player wants to do that. Right. So I think that's just the core of the issue, is that we just don't have, I mean, if no player in the world, no player on tour wants to play 11 months of the year, then clearly players have no say in what is how the sport is operated. I can tell you, not a single player would want that. Everyone would be jumping up and down if you told them we have a 9-month season or even a 10-month season. To have an extra month, I mean, players would just be like, that's incredible, right? So right. There's
yeah. So like, if they were like able to play 9 months but make the same amount of money, of course everyone like that. I feel like we could talk for a couple of hours about this, because there is so much surface area in tennis that can be improved. So you definitely are preaching to the choir, and I think all of the tennis fans that watch, consume the product, it's a hard watch sometimes, because you got like the Miami Open final was a great example of that. When was it going to start? I was trying to cover it, and matches start at 12 o'clock. It ended up starting at 6:30 after a doubles final, et cetera, et cetera. So it can be painful. So we're excited to see kind of more developments on this and just see what you guys can come to and hopefully make the sport better. It's a battle. You're not the battles are not new to you, because you're in Canada. He's known, JP, I don't know if you knew this, as Captain Canada, or Captain Davis Cup, or Mr. Davis Cup. Vasek, what were, I guess, my best memory as a Canadian covering pro tennis on the international stage has to be when you guys won the Davis Cup a couple of years ago. Funny memory from that was that right after you guys won, I asked a question to Alexi and Gabe to try and get them involved a little bit, and both of them just had no voice left to talk. I don't know if you remember that, but it was hilarious. I don't know if you could just speak to maybe, was winning the Davis Cup kind of the culmination of your kind of international tennis experience, or what was some of your best memories?
Yeah, for sure. That was right up there. I mean, from a young age, I've always wanted to compete, play for Canada. That was a huge dream. And then as we kind of, we're building a good team and realize that, maybe one day we can win this thing. It, throughout the last few years of my career, that was just, it was a dream that I had. And I think that everyone on the team had, is to win Davis Cup for the first time in history for Canada. So that was absolutely a career highlight. No question about it. I mean, that along with, the Wimbledon doubles title, of course, and the quarterfinals and singles there, and obviously a few other highlights. But the Davis Cup was very special, and it's an event that I, enjoyed the most. And there's so much on the line. I also felt, a lot of pressure because you're playing for your country, but also your teammates, right? You're with them in the locker room every day, and you grow a bond, and that if you lose a deciding match, you're losing for your country and for all your teammates. And so there's a lot of pressure, but it's something that I enjoyed, a lot throughout the course of my career. And perhaps the fact that I enjoyed that pressure was one of the reasons why that I played well, which is great, but definitely career highlight. No question about it.
If you had the choice and you could select your own team from the whole history of Canada, what would your Davis Cup team be?
You're putting me on the spot.
The guys need to know, because the guys that get left off, they know, hey, I got to raise my level.
Well, that's, I want to put some thought into this, because obviously you have the element of the good players and the team, good teammates, and you got to put everything into consideration. Obviously, the team that won was we won, so that's kind of a dream team right there. But I would say that, Daniel Nestor is number one choice, number one draft pick. He's just committed so much to Davis Cup, and did so much for tennis in Canada. Was a big reason why I think myself and Milos and came up after him, and we really looked up to him. So he's draft pick number one. And then Dennis Felix, myself, I would put myself there.
Yep.
And number five, like a good, obviously, of course, Milos was incredible player and incredible career. I would say the ultimate locker room guy, I would give that to Alexi Galarneau. Ultimate. So we gotta add him. He's on the top five. He's on the team.
Why is he such a glue guy? Is it because he literally never stops smiling?
He's just a team player, he's just just always great energy, just always positive. Really wants the best for all the teammates. And I think that's one of the reasons why we won in 2022, was that we were all, no one had any egos. I mean, whether it was, Felix, Dennis, myself, it doesn't matter, or on the bench, Alexi and Gabe, they were on the bench that year, but like everyone was just in it, and everyone played their role. Everyone wanted the whole team to succeed. And that's not always the case. You'd think it is, but especially in tennis, you have these personalities where, it's an individual sport. You're used to being very selfish your whole career, making all these decisions. Everything's about you all the time. It's always about you. And I think the fact that we were just able to separate that so well. And if you went to someone and said that was expected to play and say, hey, sorry, you're not going to play today, then everyone was just accepting every decision that a captain would make. But so great chemistry. I think that was one of the reasons we won it.
Amazing. Yeah. You guys did win it. What a team. And I think that's a pretty good group you picked there. Alexi will be happy to, we just interviewed him on the Slice. He'll be happy to know that he made the Vasek's dream team. Anyways, Vasek, that's
somebody. I feel bad. I'm definitely missing somebody. But if it's five, I'm going to say Nestor, Felix, Dennis, Alexi, and myself.
We love it.
Wow,
But
that's
it's
great.
so tough. It's so tough to. There's so many amazing players. Gabe is coming in as he's a hot shot right now. He's playing unbelievable tennis, but he's young, right? He's new on the scene. Frank Dancich, we got to put him as captain. Best captain. And I know I'm missing some guys there.
Here you go. If you could steal one of your fellow Canadians, one piece of their game, which person would you steal from? Which weapon?
Of any Canadian player?
Yeah, and add it to yours.
And well, the first thing that comes to mind right away must be the answer. And let me think if there's something else. I would say Miloš's serve.
Yeah.
Miloš's serve, because you have that serve, you're pretty much, that's half the battle.
You got the ticket. You got the ticket to a chance to win any match.
If you're not top 20 with that serve, then you need to change coaches for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's amazing. I think that's kind of all the time we got with you. So I appreciate you swooping in here, Vasek, to give us an update on the PTPA. And congrats on an amazing career in tennis. One of the absolute greatest Canadian tennis players of all time. We appreciate you coming on the show, and maybe in a few months we'll get another update from you. But thanks for this.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys. That was great. I'll come on anytime.
Let's go.
We'll hold you to that.
We'll
be careful. We'll hold you to that.
No, I'll anytime. It's been a busy few weeks. That's why I took a little bit to get here. But other than that, I got time on my hands.
Hey, how many unread text messages did you have that first day?
Oh my God, that I still do to this day.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I don't know. Well, it says I have 112 unread, but I don't think that's all from the last 2 weeks. Probably, I don't know. I'm still catching up every day. It's a lot. Yeah.
I can't imagine when that news broke. I'll be like, oh boy.
This is retirement, Vasek. So I don't know if you're gonna get much rest here.
Yeah. It's gonna be a busy time for sure.
Yeah. Cool, man. Okay,
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
you. We'll see you next time here on the show.